Mornings with Stuart Bocking.
Your city, your station 2UE.
Yes, it is 11:12. Great to have your company on this Tuesday morning. A very special guest in our studios. If you've been a fan of the Agatha Christie mysteries, you couldn't have missed him as the Inspector Hercule Poirot. He's had that role for probably more years than he cares to remember. I speak of David Suchet, and he's in our studios. David, good morning.
Good morning.
It's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming in. My mother-in-law, Erica, would have loved to have been here this morning, but she's a massive fan, doesn't have a radio show of her own, so I'm deputising on her behalf, okay?
Yeah, but it's very nice to be here.
This is your first visit to Australia?
Yeah, I've never been here before. It's a great lack in my experience as a human being. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm really enchanted by your city, I have to say. It's wonderful to be in Sydney.
It's probably not often at this stage of your career that we can say that you're making your stage debut, but you are making your Australian stage debut, aren't you?
And it was a very deliberate move. When we decided to do The Last Confession, because I first did this play 7 years ago in London, when it was decided and I was suddenly free because I'd finished Poirot to come on a tour, one of the things I wanted to do was to tour the English-speaking countries where my series has been so well supported for 25 years. So we were going to North America, we were going to Canada, and then into Los Angeles. And I said, well, hey, I must go, please, if you can arrange it, to Australia. And I'm thrilled to bits that it all worked out.
Well, we're thrilled to bits to have you here. Tell me, given that it's been broadcast in so many different territories all over the world, where's the weirdest or most inopportune moment you've been stopped by someone, either to sign something or to say, are you Poirot, or to have a photo?
The most extraordinary thing that's ever happened to me was I was filming in Newfoundland. And I was in a coffee bar with my wife, facing the wall, and a lady came into the coffee bar and stood at the door right behind me and yelled at the top of her voice, "I'd know the back of that head anywhere." As she ran across and planted a great smacker right on my on my right cheek, and my wife was aghast. And that was the most extraordinary thing. But then I have to say, I'm very lucky because the series has been so popular all over the world. We have if everybody switched on at the same time, so I'm told, if everybody switched on at the same time, we'd have about 760 million people watching. And it's quite humbling in a way.
Yes.
And I can't go anywhere in the world at all without being recognised by somebody.
I would imagine that's right. When you first auditioned for this role and it came about, could you have ever imagined that 2 decades on you'd still be playing it?
No, in no way. When I first said yes to the role, when it was offered, I was asked to do 1 season of 10 short 1-hour stories with an option maybe for a second. And that was it. I had no idea that it was going to go on and on and on. And one of the pluses now, looking back, is that I was never optioned on any 1 year to follow on to the next automatically. So sometimes there'd be a gap of a year, or sometimes there'd be, after about 10 years, I didn't do any for 4 years, and I got a letter saying, well, the series is finished, thank you very much. So, in a sense, I was able to do other work in between. Yes. I was able to do my theatre work, I was able to do my movie work, I was able to do other television work as well. And if I think back now, the 25 years, and if somebody had said to me, David, I would like you to play this character, and here's a contract for 25 years, would you sign? I'd say no.
Because I bet you'd be... I don't want to be typecast.
No,
I don't want to be typecast as Hercule Poirot.
No. And the great plus, the great gift that has been offered to me is in my career is that I've never been typecast. I may be remembered, I can see the obit now, I may be remembered as playing that character famously for 25 years, but thankfully I do lots of other different roles. This one...
That's right. We'll talk about that in a moment. Just for our listeners who can't see the back of your head and say you're unrecognisable to them just for a moment, just via your voice, give us a feel for, as we know you as Poirot.
Oh, well, if you recognise this voice, let's see if you do.
Bonjour, mes amis. It is my great pleasure to be here in your beautiful country, although I have to confess that it is a long way from Belgium.
Do you ever find yourself over the years slipping into character just when you're out and about?
No. No, because he's very different. I mean, I wear padding, and as you heard, the voice is Very different.
Yes.
And his whole attitude, his whole way of being is so different. And he's quite a loving eccentric, as well as being very irritating because he's such an egoist as well.
Do you ever give any thought as to how Agatha Christie may have perceived your portrayal of Poirot?
Well, that's such a good question. Sometimes I think, I would love to have met her, and sometimes I'm glad that I haven't, because she was notoriously famous for not liking any actor's interpretations of her characters. But one of the best or the greatest compliments given to me was from her daughter, the late Rosalind Hicks, who actually did, in a very English way, say that she thinks that if her mother had been alive and seen the performance that I gave, she would have been more than delighted. And for her to say that to me actually meant a great deal.
That's right. Yeah, that's incredible. It's almost ecstatic in anyone else's language.
Yes.
Now, tell us a bit about the play that you're here for, The Last Confession, because this is the fascinating story about the untimely demise of John Paul I, just 33 days into his papacy.
It was an extraordinary event in world history.
Yes.
We're talking mega historical moment. John Paul I was going to revolutionize the Roman Catholic Church way back now in 1978. He was going to be, and you may recognize another pope as I speak, he was known as the People's Pope. He was known as the Smiling Pope. He was known as the Pope with more like a parish priest than any other pope.
You could only be
before him.
referring to Pope Francis, aren't you?
Oh, here we go. Here's a carbon copy now of John Paul I. And if you see the interpretation of a dear actor friend of mine, Richard O'Callaghan, who plays John Paul I, when you come to see the show, you will think you're watching the same sort of personality as Pope Francis now. A gentle, loving, open-minded man. John Paul I was addressing test tube babies. He was addressing contraception. He was addressing celibacy and priests. He was going to open up the Roman Catholic Church. And this did not sit well with the conservative Curia. And who knows what happened. And that is a world mystery to this day.
Well, it has given rise to so many conspiracy theories over the years.
Yes.
Without giving anything away about the play, does it look to address and come up with a theory or
we
not?
can't, because legally we can't. We can't say,
It was
one
X
thing or
it was-
another.
Yep.
What we can say is that there are certain pointers. When you see the play, you will see that the playwright obviously has an opinion. And my character... just let me say that every single person that you will see in the play actually existed. There is not one fictional character in the play.
Right.
Everybody, and there's a cast of 20. We're all cardinals or monseigneurs or archbishops and all that. I play Cardinal Benelli, who was Patriarch of Florence, who was John Paul I's best friend. And Benelli, who was known as the Vatican Kissinger, he was even known as the Berlin Wall because he was such a power broker himself.
Right.
He got his friend John Paul into the papal seat. And when he died and was found dead only 33 days later, sitting up in bed and buried without an autopsy, and different stories coming out of the Vatican as to how he was found and the doors closing on all information that was given, he found himself, my character found himself, losing faith in his God and faith in the Roman Catholic Church. And he died only 4 years later, striving to become Pope himself. And I won't tell you what happens because that is a very interesting story. But then he had a massive heart attack 4 years later and died very disillusioned himself. It's a great modern play that is dealing with nothing about religion, but everything about politics in the Vatican and this personal man's crisis of faith that you will witness me going through on stage as a result of his disillusion in the Catholic Church.
It is incredible.
It's an extraordinary
story.
story.
We'll get to see you when you come back to Sydney in mid-September because from Friday you're off to Perth, Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne. It's a nice way to see our country,
Well,
isn't
you
it?
know, being a first-timer in Australia, I am really having, as somebody said, I'm really having the cook's tour. I call it like a taster menu of your wonderful country.
Yes.
I'm going to taste all these different cities, and then I'm going to come back with my wife when I'm not working and enjoy it more leisure. But I'm thrilled to be here. I've always wanted to come here and to come acting and to say thank you to you all, really, for supporting me for 25 years. The least I can do is get on stage and perform for you.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing you because The Last Confession will open in Sydney from September 24, and that's at the Theatre Royal, and tickets are available through Ticketmaster, so you can go to ticketmaster.com.au or phone 1300 723 038. We know him so well as Hercule Poirot and now get to see his character in this new play coming to Australia, The Last Confession. It opens in Sydney September 24, the Theatre Royal. And David Suchet, it is lovely to see you.
Lovely to be here.
Thank you very much for your time. Terrific. And it opens in Australia at Her Majesty's in Perth coming up on Friday. It's The Last Confession.